Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our witnesses for joining us. Mr. Ratner, the Biden administration talks about the pursuit of guardrails in the US-PRC relationship. And as I know you're aware, in this last year represented a historic high in PLA incursions in Taiwanese Air Defense Identification Zone. We also know, too, that the PLL Navy is engaged in the largest naval peacetime buildup in the history of the world. We also know, too, that despite years of trying, the PLA has so far refused to establish a crisis communication channel with the United States military. Can you tell me within that realm how then this policy of guardrails has resulted in fewer incursions in the Air Defense Identification Zone, has in any way, shape, or form influenced the massive military buildup, including ships for the PLL Navy? Can you tell me how it's encouraged in any way, shape, or form the Chinese to open a crisis communication channel so we don't have this miscalculation that you all talk about? There's nothing that's happened that avoids that miscalculation. Can you tell me how the guardrails are functioning, how they're going to get us to a place where all these things are de-escalating to a point where we can feel like we're making some progress?
Congressman, the principal response of the Department of Defense to the trends you're describing is to reinforce our own combat credible deterrence in terms of our own capability and alongside our allies and partners. So that's how we're responding to China's military modernization. The notion of guardrails and the notion of military-to-military communications is intended to do a few things. One, to, during periods of crisis, establish those kinds of communications. Two, to be able to inject strategic messages when necessary. But they are not the singular or primary response to PLA military modernization.
Seems like to me, though, there's contradictory statements, though, coming out where you say that the effort is to deter. We want to deter the Chinese from these sorts of actions. Yet we see that there's no deterrence there. We see them continuing massive buildups. We see increase in very aggressive behavior in those areas. We talk about wanting to avoid miscalculation, yet we do nothing to really force the issue on crisis communications. And then on the other side, we say that, well, we're going to go out there and do this constructive engagement that results in nothing other than our military having to continue massive amounts of buildup ourselves, and that too is, we're told, as a policy that's going to deter the Chinese. Can you reconcile how you look at both of those and say that none of this is having an effect on the PLA?
Congressman, when we talk about deterrence, we're talking about combat credible deterrence, right. And our central goal is to prevent the PRC from initiating aggression against the United States and our allies and partners and being prepared to prevail if they miscalculate and make that decision. The actions you're describing are acts of coercion, gray zone activity is described. We do focus on that insofar as we are working to conduct our own operations to ensure we retain the ability to operate consistent with international law, and we are enabling our allies and partners, including Taiwan, to be more resilient and to be able to respond to that kind of behavior.
But in that realm, we don't even look at it. It's great to have mill-to-mill buildup and talk about what are we going to do in that deterrent realm, but there hasn't even been an assertion of a conversation about where China's going. By 2030, they'll have 1,500 nuclear weapons, 1,500. And somehow we think that our strategic deterrence in the conventional realm is the only place that we need to be, and that we're not even having conversations about how somehow we limit the military buildup, not just on conventional, but on the nuclear side. So tell me, what's the policy for us besides the deterrence from us building up the military to say somehow we want to get to a point where each side stops building up, that there has to be a point where you say, maybe we ought to have a conversation about where the stopping point is. Even with Russia, we had that.
Congressman, I think what you're describing is that there are, and that is one of the reasons why we are interested in talking with the PLA, particularly as it relates to new domains like space and cyber, to understand the escalatory potential there, and so we can both shape our actions and policies accordingly. As it relates to nuclear weapons, I will just say the President's budget seeks more than $37 billion for modernization of the nuclear triad. We are taking China's nuclear modernization seriously.